The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Joe Biden went out on the campaign trail, and in context, he said that whereas the Republicans want to unchain Wall Street, they're going to, quote, put y'all back in chains. Now, of course, conservatives have jumped all over this trying to... See, here's what happens. Conservatives are so desperate for an opportunity to call a mainstream Democrats' campaign statements racist because the Republicans so often make racist campaign statements that they're jumping all over this one. Except it's not really racist. I'm going to play this for you, and then we'll talk about it. This is so funny. Conservatives completely up in arms about racist Joe Biden here. I think it's much ado about nothing. Let's take a look at this, Louis.
Said it. Every Republican's voted for it. Look at what they value and look at their budget and what they're proposing. Romney wants to let he said in the first 100 days, he's going to let the big banks once again write their own rules. Unchain Wall Street. They're going to put you all back in chains.
All right, so there's the comment. And again, it's not like it was a crowd of black people where it's very clearly accusatory, and then if it's not, what other chain reference could really be made here? The statement that came out from the Romney campaign was the comments made by the vice president are not acceptable in our political discourse, and they demonstrate yet again that the Obama campaign will say and do anything to win this election. President Obama should tell the American people whether he agrees with Joe Biden's comments. First of all, the racist implications that we're hearing are just not true, in my opinion. Louis, do you see racist implications here?
No, I just think it was a poor choice of words.
Natan, do you see racist implications?
Well, I don't know. The argument that it was just a poor choice of words, if a Republican made the same mistake, we would probably say it represents some sort of a deep-down racist ideology. Or racist comment, or racial comment, if not racist. So I think we're giving him the benefit of the doubt because we kind of agree with Joe Biden on many other things.
I disagree, though, because he's talking about, it's not like he's just ad hoc saying Republicans are going to put you in chains. This is not a group of black people, first of all, but secondly, he's carrying through just what he was saying. Republicans have said they want to unchain, unshackle, in many times is the term that's been used by Republicans, Wall Street, okay? And then Biden is saying, well, they're going to put y'all in chains. In other words, restrict freedoms, which we've seen, right? Restrict the freedom to to file a lawsuit in many cases for fear of this kind of Sasquatch-like frivolous lawsuit that Republicans are always looking for. Cases where, look at freedom in terms of women's rights, right? Republicans do want to put women's rights in chains. I think it's actually a pretty apt analogy for what's actually going on.
Yeah, it works when you put it into its proper context, but still kind of a poor choice of words. I mean, you are walking on eggshells when you're running for re-election, and he should have just been more careful.
I basically totally disagree with the idea that this could even be controversial. But given that it is, I think he should watch his language more, which is going to be difficult because he's very gaffe-prone.
He is gaffe-prone.
Extremely gaffe-prone.
It would be a big effing deal if Biden didn't gaffe on the campaign trail.
It would be.
Okay, did Mitt Romney disqualify himself by accepting foreign cash? In mid-June, this was just before the Romney trip to Europe, John McCain gave an interview to PBS where he said something kind of interesting. He criticized Sheldon Adelson's huge contributions to Republican candidates and super PACs, saying, quote, much of Adelson's casino profits come to him through his casino in Macau. Okay? Now then McCain went on and said, this says that obviously, maybe in a roundabout way, foreign money is coming into an American campaign to American political campaigns. Now, in January, the Supreme Court actually said that Citizens United does allow corporations and people to donate anonymously and in unlimited quantities to campaigns through super PACs. Foreign cash is strictly forbidden. So then the question is, shortly after Romney goes abroad on this incredible, speaking of gaffe-prone, on this incredible gaffe-laden trip to Europe and Israel and so on and so forth, there's a bunch of these fundraisers in London, in Israel, etc. Now, on the record, these fundraisers were for Americans who were living abroad. It's all perfectly fine. It's Americans giving money to an American campaign. They just happen to be living abroad or vacationing abroad or however it is that they found themselves in these locations. However, We don't really know who donated what, okay? The Guardian noted that Romney decided to completely block the Israel event from the press, including American press. Transparency that had been promised completely disappeared. It turned into total opacity. We don't know who donated what, is the bottom line. And Citizens United does say no foreign cash can enter elections. It allows super PACs to accept money without saying who the donors are through this special set of loopholes. But the bottom line is the campaign cannot accept foreign cash. We need to know exactly where that money came from. We need transparency from the Romney campaign. And if it does turn out that foreign cash was accepted, by the letter of the law, this would disqualify Romney from being a presidential candidate.
And is this being taken seriously?
By who?
By anyone?
Well, I don't know.
I mean, is this the equivalent of the birth certificate thing?
Oh, I really hope not, because there's actually legitimate questions here. In other words, we just need to see who donated. Show us who donated. Let's see the transparency that the Romney campaign
You're
promised.
asking the Romney campaign for transparency.
Well, it would be nice.
Okay, I should just go ask Warren Buffett for $10 million
Yeah.
in cash. Maybe he'll give it to me.
You should go ask Warren Buffett to pay more taxes than his secretary.
Yeah. Well,
Just as unlikely.
at least he's trying to make that happen.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
Lou Giovanni, who's our friend from The Examiner, but also from the great Facebook page, We Survived Bush, You'll Survive Obama. He has this great article in The Examiner about this Obama death threat that's being looked at now by the Secret Service, where a cat was impaled and burned alive next to an Obama campaign sign. This is being considered a possible threat to the president after this was found using an American flag to top it off. The impalement was done right next to the Obama campaign sign. This was in southern Minneapolis in Longfellow Park. The park is also used as a polling area, and the primary elections, of course, are being held there. It's not known if the display has anything to do with the local election. This drew the attention of law enforcement agencies from all over the Minnesota area, including Homeland Security. It's been reported that other items found at the scene included a can of iced tea, as well as cat food tins. It hasn't been released if fingerprints have been found. You know, every single one of these stories is interesting to me because you really just don't see the left using animal cruelty to intimidate or to make political statements. You just don't see it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, is this something that is just, I mean, why do this at all? Is this even a death threat?
It's not even clear whether it's a death
mean,
threat. It's definitely a tactic meant to intimidate. To intimidate what? You think someone's not going to vote because there's a dead cat on their lawn?
Right.
I
Who are
don't
you
know.
trying to influence? I mean, you're certainly not going to make Obama drop out of the campaign.
Listen, not that I need to tell you that we see an overwhelming amount of protest animal cruelty from the right. I mean, let's contextualize. Remember, Mitt Romney strapped his dog to the roof of his station wagon and drove around the country as the dog defecated in fear.
Yes.
I don't think I have to tell you twice which side, conservatives or progressives, are the ones who tend to use animal cruelty or disregard animal welfare.
You know what? It's not just animals. It's human life as well.
Unless you're an unborn fetus. In that case, you're essentially a god.
Right.
You are.
Untouchable.
Untouchable.
Yeah. Yep.
But once you're born, healthcare out the window, right to marry whoever you love,
Welfare
out the window. Yeah, all those things.
Mhm.
No question about it. All right, on today's bonus show, we've got a bunch of great stories for you. Producer Lewis actually both produces and hosts the bonus show, which is quite a bit of work, isn't it?
It's very involved. Yeah.
Okay, Fukushima. We're now seeing mutant butterflies around Fukushima. We'll talk to Lewis about whether his Japan vacation trip plans are on hiatus, so to speak. Also, Saudi Arabia is objecting to two different new domain names, .islam and .gay. Interesting. What's the connection there? We'll talk about that. And also, an Earth-like planet has been discovered. Size-wise, atmosphere-wise, temperature-wise, it looks very, very favorable for supporting human life. It's 20 light years away. We'll talk about that. Get the bonus show if you don't yet get it. DavidPakman.com/membership. We'll take a break. Back with plenty more after this.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
Welcome back to the show. I want to say hi to a new David Pakman Show member of the day, which is, of course, made possible in part by liberalbias.com. Which would you rather trust, Louis? Statistics and facts or conservative values? I know what the answer is for me. Find out more at liberalbias.com. Joseph Rader. Joseph Rader is a new David Pakman Show member I'm thrilled to be saying hello to, who is now a part of the David Pakman Show family. I don't know how else to say it.
That's all we can say, really.
What are we listening to here?
This is the North Korean dog music.
It's hilarious that we call it the dog music because now we know what that means, but to somebody who's just tuning into the show, they would have no idea. There was a very short-lived North Korean YouTube channel, and apparently in North Korea, dogs are not domesticated, or in other words, they're still domesticated animals, but they're in zoos. Like, people have them in a zoo, and it's like cool to go to the zoo and look at the animals. So there was a video which was just dogs in the type of area where you would see like a tiger in a zoo, and this music was playing. It was an incredibly touching promotional video for North Korea.
Apparently, dogs are quite the spectacle in North Korea.
I'll say. Incredible. Yesterday, I had a road rage incident. Of course, I was perfectly calm, but the other driver was incredibly raging. I was at an intersection, okay? I have a green light. I'm making a left. There's someone who is kind of crossing that intersection. In other words, they have a red light, and they're just kind of rolling forward through the red light, making a left themselves. Very bizarre driving. In other words, you've got a red light. Why are you making a left on red? I have absolutely no idea. So as I'm going by, it's still light out, I roll down my window, and I'm looking at the woman who's driving, probably about 30-year-old woman. And as I roll the window down, I see her look at me kind of like she's confused as to what I'm doing, and I go, "You've got a red light," just like that. I say, "You've got a red light," and I point to it. And she looks at me, she puts up both of her middle fingers, and she says, "F you, go F yourself, F you," and she's waving the middle fingers out of the window. How angry must she be? She was running a red light. She almost hit me, and I said, you're running a red light, you know? Very, very angry driver.
Yeah, I often see people make a driving error and then flip someone else off. Right. You know, sometimes it's me.
Right, of course.
And you know, sometimes they don't flip people off. I mean, I live right near a four-way stop, and yesterday I was coming home. A car pulls up across from me at the four-way stop. It's taking a left. I pull up to the four-way stop across from it. I'm going straight. And now the third car to pull up is this relatively older man in a very old Mercedes. The car takes its left, and I start going, and he just puts his hand up like this, like he has no idea what's going on, and just goes right through. And just, I'm just, you know, nothing I can do. I
will admit that a move I sometimes do at a four-way intersection when there's confusion about who showed up first is, in theory, the car in front of you stops at the stop sign and then goes. And then you're supposed to pull up to that stop sign, stop, and then go when it's your turn. Sometimes I will take my previous position, my position from when I was second in line, and I will just act as if that was my stopped at the stop sign position and go in that order. In other words, based on when I stopped, when it wasn't even my turn. That's not a bad move, right?
It's not a good one.
Yeah, Natan, you know the move I'm talking about.
Yeah, and when other people do it, I flip them off.
But in this particular case, I was completely right. I did not deserve to be swore at. Sworn or swore at? I shouldn't have been sworn at.
No,
I don't know.
No. Yeah, you were right.
Okay.
She was wrong.
Speaking of liars, Joe the plumber is now saying, put a damn fence on the border going to Mexico and start shooting. Now, really, we shouldn't be calling him Joe the plumber. We should be calling him Samuel Wurzelbacher the liar, who is not a plumber and doesn't make $250,000 a year, isn't buying a plumbing business, has no plumbing license.
Well, I think now he makes at least $250,000 a year for all of the press he got from lying about not making or making $250,000.
Yeah, all you have to do to make $250,000 a year speaking is lie and say you're making $250,000 a year from plumbing. It's actually kind of brilliant in a way.
I wouldn't say that would normally work out in your favor if you try that. I think he was in the right place at the right time.
You know, if you can lie about being a plumber, lie about something more glamorous. I know a bunch of plumbers. It's pretty hard work. They work long days. Oftentimes they get very dirty. I would say lie about something, lie up if you're going to lie about what your job is. Although maybe he was thinking it's not really believable that he's a nuclear physicist. I'm going to lie about being a plumber because it's more or less believable. I've been in rooms with plumbing. Maybe that could qualify him. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe once he changed the faucet on his sink.
Yeah, he changed the flapper, maybe.
Yeah.
On his toilet. Okay, here's what he had to say. Here's his brilliant idea. The audio is not great. The video is from Huffington Post.
You know, for years I've said, put a damn fence on the border going to Mexico and start shooting. I'm running for Congress, and that should be a bad thing to say. You know what? That's how I feel. I'm not going to hide it because I'm running for an office.
Right, of course not. Why would he not make his incredibly xenophobic, violent, and alluding to crimes he would commit statements just because he's running for Congress? Why would you pare that back?
I don't know. You know what? In a way, I admire that.
You do. He's not hiding the fact that he's completely out of his gourd.
And because he's not hiding it, he won't win. Now, if every politician did that, I think this country would be in much better shape.
It's funny how earlier in the video he refers to himself in the third person as Joe, but his name, he's not really Joe. I mean, his middle name is Joseph. It's hilarious to me referring to yourself in the third person by a name that is not really your name.
Well, you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah.
I mean, he'll lie about that.
You know who else was at the county?
But he won't lie about his violence and the xenophobia.
You know who else was at the fundraiser? Sheriff Joe Arpaio.
Oh, was he really?
It's like the perfect collection. Yeah, there were like 125 people there, and the Prescott E-News is saying Joe Arpaio was there. It's unbelievable.
Those guys would get along great.
Marcy Kaptur is running against Wurzelbacher, Joe the plumber, heavily favored to win, condemned his comments, saying Joe the plumber's comments have no place in a civil society. Why not say Joe the plumber's comments don't even deserve to be listened to because his name's not Joe and he's not a plumber, but he misled the entire country, including President Obama and John McCain about that throughout the campaign.
Sam the xenophobe.
Remember when John McCain championed this guy?
Oh, yeah.
That was unbelievable. And by the way,
he was basically the face of the campaign for like a few months.
Not for a few months, for a few days.
It was a few weeks at least.
I don't know.
It really
Matan,
was.
how long was it?
I think it was about 2 hours.
Yeah.
Oh, come on.
No, it was probably like a week, and then it kind of fizzled over the following 2 weeks.
I wonder how Joe the plumber, I can't even say it with a straight face, I wonder how Wurzelbacher the liar would react if Mexicans said they should put up a fence and start shooting Americans. Well, that would be different because they're illegal immigrants. But Joe, they're not illegally in their own country. Oh yeah, let's see Obama's birth certificate. Sheriff Joe Arpaio told me that it was faked. Redirection.
Yeah, it's kind of the same thing. Put up a fence and start shooting at people who are in their own country, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the fence isn't going to be behind the border. No, the fence is going to be on the border, and he wants to shoot at them while they're in their own country.
He's a plumber who's one clogged toilet away from breaking into the top 1%.
Oh, man.
We should I thought it would be fascinating. We should really do this. We might be able to interview Joe the plumber. Let's get him on, but then ask only plumbing questions. And maybe even I'll get like a friend of mine who's actually a plumber and have him in studio to like debate Joe the plumber on plumbing related issues.
Well, the funniest thing would be that we contact his PR person and they don't watch this clip before he comes on.
Right.
And so they don't know that we're planning on basically ambushing him with questions he's not going to be able to answer.
And they're not. It's funny because usually a political ambush is like gotcha questions about specific political donations. We're just going to ask basic questions about the trade he claims to practice.
I think this is actually a brilliant idea.
Yeah, no, we should do it.
I want to.
All right, let's get on that, Lewis.
All right.
All right, I'll get on it.
Okay.
For a story about an actual plumber, I want to show you a dramatic video of a 71-year-old man who was a lifelong plumber getting taken to the ground by police for questioning Paul Ryan wanting to cut Medicare, cut Social Security, cut benefits for seniors. This is incredible. This is Tom Nielsen, who found himself face down on the floor being handcuffed because he had questions about what on earth is Paul Ryan doing to seniors. Okay, let's take a look at this video here. This is from a recent Paul Ryan event at the Rotary Club, apparently. It's the Rotary Club of, I don't know where it is. It's the Rotary Club meeting of that particular jurisdiction. Here it is.
Most of our debt in the future comes from our entitlement programs,
Hey,
namely
what is this
Medicare
entitlement program
and
all about,
Medicaid.
Mr. Congressman?
So-
I paid into that for 50 years. My unemployment and my Social Security and my Medicare, and now
All right,
you're
so
gonna...
now police started to escort him out. And then this part is where Paul Ryan is actually making fun of the guy.
He's taking his blood pressure medication.
Now, simultaneously, as Paul Ryan's making those comments, the guy's face down, and police are handcuffing him, 71 years old, as you can see here, and then being escorted out. Doesn't seem to be injured. So this is troubling to me because, I mean, there's a number of issues here. Number one, 2 other people found themselves under arrest for speaking out at the luncheon. And then, of course, this individual, Tom Nielsen, watched as 20 others were escorted out as well. It says a lot about Paul Ryan, I think, if he's willing to make jokes while senior citizens are on the ground howling in pain after asking why Paul Ryan wants to cut their benefits. I think it says a lot about Paul Ryan.
Was he howling in pain?
Yeah.
I mean, I understand why the man was removed. He was very loud and abrasive and clearly interrupting things. Making fun of him, pretty distasteful. And the budget plan, pretty distasteful as well.
Yeah, that's the real distasteful thing is what Paul Ryan would do to seniors in this country. Natan, you don't seem that moved by this.
No, I mean, I do think that the joke that he cracked was probably in poor taste and indicates a general. This is probably going to come up again in the campaign, is what I'm saying.
I would assume.
But the guy is interrupting a speech or an answer that's being given. So I mean, I think it's fine for him to have been removed.
It's fine for him to have been removed, yeah, but certainly pushing the 71-year-old onto the ground and handcuffing him as if he's some kind of, as if he's just done some kind of violent crime seems a little much to me.
Yeah, I don't know if interrupting something like that is actually a criminal offense.
I don't think it is. It's just a Rotary meeting.
Right.
You're just speaking. You're just talking loudly when somebody else is speaking. It's like saying in school, if you interrupt the teacher, maybe that's a criminal offense. I mean, listen, the teacher was talking.
What if I interrupt you?
Yeah, I mean, that
Am I going to get taken out of here in cuffs?
It's a little
You tell
bit
me,
absurd.
Dave. All right. I'm done.
Natan, you want to get in on this?
No, I'm all set.
Why would any single woman, actually, let me back up. I don't, whether she's single or not.
I don't know where you're going.
Why
with
would
this.
a single woman, why would any woman, Republican or Democratic, vote for Paul Ryan?
No, you're not talking about a woman who does not have a spouse.
No, I'm talking about any woman at all. Any woman at all.
Okay.
Why would any women vote for Paul Ryan?
And why would single women vote for him?
Yeah,
There's no reason for either.
I don't know why any women would vote for him. This is a great list from Upworthy, and it outlines very, very clearly 5 bullet points which really indicate why no woman, period, should be voting for Paul Ryan or voting for Mitt Romney, given that Paul Ryan comes along in that package with him. Number 1, Paul Ryan voted against the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act. That's the one that Romney's advisors couldn't answer when Sam Stein asked on a conference call, is Romney for the Lilly Ledbetter Act? They said, after a 6-second silence, we'll have to get back to you on that, Sam. Well, Paul Ryan, it's very clear. He voted against it. He doesn't want to legislate that women should make the same as men when they're doing similar work. Nope, that shouldn't happen. Number 2, Paul Ryan opposes abortion even in cases of rape and incest. Even in cases of rape and incest. Number 3, Paul Ryan wants to get rid of Planned Parenthood and has actually already voted to defund it several times. Number 4, Paul Ryan would criminalize some forms of birth control. And number 5, Paul Ryan would outlaw in vitro fertilization. Can't have kids naturally, Lewis? Well, not you, obviously. You can't have kids naturally.
No, I cannot.
Can your girlfriend, wife, spouse, or life partner not have kids naturally? Too bad. Would be illegal for IVF if Paul Ryan got his way. Why would any women vote for this guy?
I'll tell you which women should. Women who are in the top income bracket. And women who have a spouse who makes what would put them in the top income bracket.
I thought you were going to say women who have a spouse that can bear children naturally.
Yeah, but why, Lewis? I mean, because you have a lot of money, you don't. That doesn't. If you can't do IVF because Paul Ryan outlaws it, doesn't matter if you have a lot of money or not.
I'm just saying, if there are any women who would vote for him, I think those would be the ones. I think that would be the only legitimate reason that a woman should vote for Paul Ryan and Mitt Romney.
Long story short, Paul Ryan thinks women shouldn't get paid the same as men for the same type of work. They shouldn't be able to decide for themselves what to do with their bodies. Would make it illegal for you to have a child if you can't conceive naturally, and he would make it illegal to prevent pregnancy by using birth control. Power to women. Women are the equals of men, clearly, Lewis, according to Paul Ryan, right? Oh, wait, no, the opposite.
Not at all.
Paul Ryan decides. Paul Ryan is in charge of women.
Yep.
Facebook.com/David Pakman Show. We're on the way to 10,000 likes on Facebook. Let's take a break. After the break, we'll talk to Chris Petrella about how banks, the big banks, are actually making money from the detention of suspected illegal immigrants. Stay tuned.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. Welcome back to The David Pakman Show.
Joining me again is Christopher Petrella. He's a columnist at Nation of Change, also a PhD student at UC Berkeley in African American Studies. Great to talk to you as always. I want to walk through this fascinating circle now, which we've identified, which connects private prisons making money from the detention of illegal immigrants, which we've covered individually on this show, as well as the bank investments in some of these private prison industries, which basically leads us to some of the big Wall Street banks that were bailed out by the government, making money essentially from the detention of illegal immigrants. You start where you think makes the most sense.
That's right, David. Well, thanks for having me on today. I think it might make sense to begin by clarifying some of our terms. And the term prison industrial complex has become so popular in recent years that in a lot of ways, to paraphrase former Secretary of Labor Robert Reich, the term itself has gone from a period of obscurity to relative meaninglessness without any intervening period of coherence. It's applied so carelessly today that I think it makes sense to begin by defining very precisely what we mean by prison industrial complex. So here's essentially my argument. In recent years, a lot of attention has been paid to the industrial operations of the prison industrial complex. That is, the contracted exploitation of prison labor. Surprisingly little attention has actually been paid to prison financing. That is, the benefactors, the financiers, investors, shareholders who actually hold significant investments in private prison companies. So it's actually a bit ironic when we start to talk about prison labor, because at present only about 0.5% of all prisoners are contracted by profit-generating companies. And so the argument might go something like this: a private firm, a private company like Boeing or Texas Instruments or even Victoria's Secret will hire a prisoner for 80 cents an hour to assemble products, to perform services, etc. And then, of course, as the argument goes, the company will actually increase its profit margins by paying less. And although that's kind of a seductive story, and I think it has a lot of emotional traction in the public sphere, it's actually only half true. And essentially, here's why. In the late 70s, in 1979, there was a piece of legislation passed called, the colloquial name is PI, the Prison Industry Enhancement Certification Act. And what the act basically said was that any employer wishing to hire, quote, convict labor actually needs to adhere to prevailing minimum wage standards. So today, the federal minimum wage is at $7.25, and so any company wishing to hire prisoners needs to pay $7.25. The catch is that written into this law is also a provision that allows state departments of corrections to deduct up to 80% of gross wages that prisoners earn while working for a profit-generating company. And
right, that was going to be my next question, which is the company may be paying the actual minimum wage, but what actually goes to the prisoner could be a tiny fraction of that, as we often hear these $1 an hour, 50 cent an hour wages. So is it safe to say that it's the state then that is keeping that difference?
Well, it's not necessarily the state that's keeping the difference. The state is definitely making the decision ultimately as to what proportion of wages will be garnished. And as the law states, it can be up to 80% of wages garnished. And typically, a proportion of that could go to family support. Some of it could go to victims' compensation, services, or funds. And some of it could actually end up in state departments of corrections, but typically not all of it. to answer the question specifically. So the point being that, in a lot of ways, these companies aren't saving tremendous amounts of money by going this route. So although that is one, I would say, pole of the prison industrial complex, it is just one. And it's also important to consider the role that shareholders play in essentially formatting the operations of private prison companies.
Okay, so in the limited time we have, I definitely want to touch on this circle that involves the detention of those suspected to be in the country illegally, leading all the way back to the big bank. So talk to us a little bit about that. Which banks own stakes in which private prison companies, first of all, I think is the question.
Sure, yeah, of course. So first of all, I should just preface it briefly by saying that last year alone, around 200,000 immigrants were detained in private prison facilities. That would be privately managed, owned, operated facilities. And this is a number that's up by over 1,000% in the last decade. So every time a piece of anti-immigration legislation is passed by state legislatures, and of course, private prison companies are lobbying for this, specifically by talking with representatives of the Department of Homeland Security. These companies, and I'll mention them right now, are earning a pretty hefty return on their investment. So as it currently stands, David, the two largest private prison companies, Corrections Corporation of America and the GEO Group, both publicly traded, have a number of shares owned by the following 5 largest U.S. Investment banks. So, for example, Citigroup today owns about $325,000 worth of stocks, securities in these two companies. Bank of America, $1.1 million. Goldman Sachs, $3.1 million. J.P. Morgan Chase, $7.6 million. And the mother of them all, Wells Fargo, owns a whopping $118 million in these two companies, which accounts for almost 10% of GEO Group's entire market capitalization. So
right. So when I look through these numbers, and by the way, people can access these numbers on the SEC website. The Citigroup, 325,000. I mean, literally a drop in the bucket for what Citigroup is doing and the size of Citigroup. And I would say it would not be realistic to say Citigroup has a vested interest in the detention of illegal immigrants. That being said, when you look at J.P. Morgan Chase and increasingly so with Wells Fargo, there's a compelling argument to be made. We can't say that Wells Fargo is actively interested in passing these laws which will increase detention of illegal immigrants or suspected illegal immigrants, but we can clearly find why that motivation would exist.
That's right. No, I think that's true. And although, I think the picture looks bleak right now because there is such a large degree of collusion between private prison operators and investment banks. I will say, to pause, there is actually a movement afoot right now in which concerned citizens have begun to demand that all companies, and this includes the investment banks, that hold shares in private prison companies, CCA and GEO Group, divest immediately. And so if your listeners are interested in getting involved, they can head on over to the National Prison Divestment Campaign's website at prisondivestment.wordpress.com. And in a lot of ways, I think that the direct divestment in companies that invest in for-profit corrections firms is really the next step in sort of stanching the flow of the prison industrial complex.
Well, Christopher, this is great stuff because we've talked so much on the show over several years about private prisons and about individual instances of a public prison going private, vice versa. But this really ties it back into how this relates to what's going on Wall Street and with investment. So this is absolutely excellent stuff. We've been speaking with Christopher Petrella. He's a columnist at Nation of Change, so you can read his stuff there. Also a PhD student at UC Berkeley in African American Studies. Great as always to talk to you.
Thanks, David. I really appreciate it.
Okay, we'll take a break. We'll be back with more after this.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
The best way to support The David Pakman Show is a David Pakman Show membership. Go to davidpakman.com/membership to sign up today. Louis, we're talking about pennies a day. Big help to the show.
Yeah, big help. That's how we do things like move cameras around in between breaks.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There is a really interesting article in the New York Times about a rising star in Hungary's far-right Jobbik party. His name is Szanad Szegedi. He was notorious for his very aggressive comments about Jews. He accused Jews of buying up the country. He went on and on about the Jewishness of the political elite, and he claimed Jews were desecrating national symbols, etc., etc. Then it turned out that Szegedi himself is a Jew.
Imagine that.
Yeah, incredible.
You know, I bet you if people looked into their genealogy more often,
yeah,
there would be many
There would be
occurrences
tons
like
of racist, of anti-black people who have black heritage. There would be plenty of anti-Semites who have Jewish heritage. There's no question about it.
And somehow I don't think it would slow them down.
No. Well, following weeks of internet rumors, Szegedi finally acknowledged in June that his grandparents on his mother's side were Jewish, and that makes him also Jewish under Jewish law, even though he doesn't, of course, practice the faith. He criticizes it. His grandmother not only was Jewish, but was an Auschwitz survivor, and his grandfather was a veteran of forced labor camps. Now, since then, the 30-year-old has become kind of a pariah in the Jobbik party, and his political career is on the brink of completely collapsing. He didn't participate in the New York Times story. Clearly, he is troubled at this point.
Yeah. I mean, I would imagine a revelation like that would be devastating to someone who has been preaching anti-Semitic stuff his whole life.
There's actually a recording of when someone confronts him with evidence of his Jewish roots, and he first sounds surprised, and then he actually offers money and favors in exchange for keeping this completely under wraps. Can you imagine?
Wow. Crazy.
Now, he resigned last month from all of the Jobbik party positions. He gave up his membership. That wasn't good enough for the Jobbik party. Last week, they asked him to give up his seat in the European Parliament as well. And Jobbik says that the issue is not that this guy is Jewish, it's that he tried to bribe the guy who told him about his Jewish roots into not saying anything. Right, why would a far-right party care about someone they thought was a white supremacist actually being Jewish? Oh, wait a second, that's kind of like what they do.
Well, I mean, at least the bribing does seem like a legitimate reason.
It does.
So I guess, you know, we can't say with certitude that it's because he has Jewish heritage.
He actually went on to try and deny that he had ever made anti-Semitic statements, but there's so many of them that are on the record. On Hungarian state television back in 2010, he blamed privatization of assets after the end of communist on people in the Hungarian political elite who shielded themselves in their Jewishness. That doesn't sound like a typical anti-Semitic conspiracy, does it?
Not at all, Dave.
There's a number of other ones, too, that which I won't even have to go into. He talks about massive real estate purchases being done in order to set up places for Israeli residents to move to.
So anyway, this story has a happy ending.
It does have, well, I don't know, does it? What is the happy ending?
The happy ending is that this man finds out he has, or maybe he knew it all along, Jewish family members, everyone finds out, he loses his position and is miserable for eternity.
Well, that's the interesting thing. He actually did end up meeting with a rabbi, and the rabbi said, you know, it's a complicated situation, but as a rabbi, it is my duty to receive anyone who's in a situation of crisis, especially anyone who is Jewish and is now actually facing their heritage. And during the meeting, Szegedi actually apologized for the statements that he made, which may have offended Jews, and he vowed to visit concentration camps to pay his respects. And I feel mixed about this because on the one hand, it's great that he's making those changes, but on the other hand, it's not really a guy who otherwise really would care. It's just that he's now part of the group. Otherwise, he would be perfectly fine ridiculing and criticizing an ethnic and religious group.
Right. But who knows? Maybe this will turn him around and he'll start doing good things for the world.
Maybe so. This is an incredible story also from our friend Lou Colagiovanni over at the Examiner. Rather than pay a $100,000 life insurance policy, Progressive Insurance is defending a woman's killer. Did you read about this, Louis?
Yeah, this is, I'd say it's unbelievable, but it really isn't. There's no surprise.
24-year-old Baltimore resident Caitlin Fisher was in a car accident. Okay, the car accident ended up killing her. This was back in 2010. She was hit by driver Ronald Kevin Hope III. He ran a red light. Hope had almost no insurance, but Fisher's policy had a clause which called for her insurer, which is Progressive, to cover the difference if and when she was involved in an accident with someone who was underinsured. Now, instead of paying Fisher's $100,000 life insurance policy, Progressive instead opted to help the killer defend himself, mount a legal defense, with the idea that if he's found innocent, they wouldn't be required to pay out the policy, and they might spend less than the $100,000 on his defense.
Right.
Okay? Now, the Fisher family obviously has been upset about this for years. They trusted, in theory, their insurance company. They didn't know that they would behave in such a way. And instead, they're having to absorb all of these court costs, which is unbelievable. Now, as it happens in the state of Maryland, you can't, if you're a private party, sue an insurance company if they won't pay out a policy. You have to sue the offending party, meaning, in this case, the guy who ran the red light and killed her. So following the law, they did sue Mr. Hope. They actually won $760,000 in damages. Now, for people who are going around saying, why do they need all that money? It's actually kind of sad. The victim, Caitlin Fisher, had student loans. And it's very common that when a student loan holder dies, the companies actually go to the survivors to collect that money. Case in point, they're going to need to use this money to pay those court costs, which weren't initially paid because they had to defend themselves or pursue this progressive defense. And also they're going to have to pay off her student loans as well as a number of other expenses. At this point, the Progressive Insurance is actually denying that they helped Hope's defense. They said that he was not defended by Progressive. However, the information is very much on the record that that's not the case. There's this individual, attorney Moffitt, who is indeed Progressive's lawyer and did indeed help the defendant here, Mr. Hope, and he's actually defended multiple cases for Progressive. It's very, very clear. This is an incredibly disappointing story, but I'm not surprised. I mean, we know insurance companies are at the top of the list of companies that put profit over absolutely everything. Fortunately, in this case, at least the damages were awarded in the right way in the end.
How much can we let the government do? Should the government be involved with health care? I mean, we agree on that. What about car insurance? What about home insurance? I mean, should the government be overseeing all of that?
No, I don't actually think so. I think healthcare is a specific one that makes sense. I just think that things like car insurance, I'm okay with private companies doing car insurance. It's just a matter of this situation is the epitome of what is wrong with that industry. And, you know, I don't want to, not being an expert in the industry, I don't want to jump in and say regulation is what we need, but I just know that this situation is hugely damaging.
It certainly can be.
Yesterday, let's go to your voicemails and emails. Yesterday, we did the story about a man jailed for collecting rainwater in Oregon. I got a strange voicemail. I can't really understand this voicemail. Maybe you can. Let's take a listen. I know it's about that topic.
Okay, first thing, it's pronounced Oregon. And the second thing is the water is like the rivers. You know, the surface water belongs to the state. You see, we can drill wells.
Okay, it goes on like this for 2 minutes.
The water belongs to the state, I guess, is the point.
Very difficult to understand these voicemails lately. I don't know what's going on. If there's some kind of a connection issue or some other kind of factor.
Certainly possible. Yeah.
Should I do some emails? Do we have time?
Yeah, you can do one or two.
On the McCain gaffe, where he said Mitt Romney absolutely has not paid taxes and then corrected himself, is anyone else having a hard time understanding how money in Swiss bank accounts trickles down to us? Yeah, a lot of people are not understanding that. That's actually a really good question.
It's impossible to understand, actually, because it can't happen.
And why would someone who has vetted Mitt Romney as a candidate have to qualify his statements that he's confident he paid taxes instead of saying, I've seen his tax returns and he paid taxes? Well, because McCain said his advisors probably saw them and probably would have told him if there were no taxes paid. Very, very weird to understand what John McCain's talking about.
Nobody is really sure what's going on over there.
Nobody knows. All right, we'll see you on the bonus show. If you don't get the bonus show, davidpakman.com/membership. Otherwise, we'll see you tomorrow.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.